What is going on YouTube? Chrono here and welcome back to another PSO2 video. So today I'm actually going to be setting up a weapon specifically for the event, and I wanted to set it up along with you guys. But before we jump into that, guys, if you're new to the channel, my name is Chrono. I primarily cover PSO2 content. Would much appreciate subscribers work our way towards that 8K mark, hopefully by the end of this year. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into this. So why am I setting up an event weapon specifically? Well, these event weapons are actually pretty powerful, but you probably have noticed I've already got one. This weapon is actually going to be repurposed. Now, currently this weapon is set up to be used for the event. However, looking at the event and how it works out, as well as how long these event weapons are actually going to be useful, I'm actually going to set up a separate weapon to use for the event specifically, while I have this weapon to use primarily for purple triggers. It's looking like these elemental weapons are actually very powerful purple triggers. I do want to set them up separately to be able to use them as normal. However, as you can see, I have already got this one augmented to the teeth, so setting up another weapon just like it would be fairly expensive. However, setting it up for the event is actually pretty inexpensive, and I want to show you guys how I would do this if I was working on a budget, if I had a little bit more money to play with, and if I just didn't care and wanted the absolute most I can get out of every single weapon I was using. So let's start out with technically fixing our weapon for a purple trigger. So in case you're someone who wants to set up a weapon for a purple trigger, this is more or less what you're going to want to go outside of a few caveats. One, you could switch out this technique 4 for mastery 4. I feel like that's a bit overkill personally, so I'm not going to do that. I feel like technique 4 is fine. Now, there's an argument made for Giga's technique if you want the extra 15 HP, but you don't need it. Like, you don't need to go another extra 15 HP. That seems a bit overkill, so I'm not going to bother with that process. We've got Ice Exploit, which is super awesome. We have our Nil Soul. That is super helpful as well, and that should cover most of what we're looking to do here. We want to keep the element as well as the death knell. I say the element, but what I mean is the augment that's set specifically for the event itself. That's set for death knell. Now, if we're going to be setting this up for purples, we don't need this. Purple triggers don't have enemies that will use this augment whatsoever, so we need to drop this. What are we going to put in its place? Well, we could put in Mastery. Mastery is 2.4, 2.4, and 2.4 damage resistance, but again, expensive. Not really what I would want to go with. So I'm going to use Alt Secreta. It's down to 60k a piece, at least on ship 2. It's usually about around 100k, maybe sub 100k, so it's not too bad to get a hold of. So I would recommend that being in that slot. So we're going to go ahead and take care of that first. So let's pop over here. And we're just going to top that up. And then, of course, order is up to the individual, but I have my own method. Let's see. So we're dropping this. We want to go with that and that. That is 10%. I'm not going to burn a 20. And since I'm doing a video, it's probably going to fail, but let's go ahead and just do it. Yeah, this is the problem. It's because we're doing a video. Would you believe it only took us one extra try? Anyway, that's what, 500k loss. Not that big a deal. I can live with that. Our 20% are going to be needed for something else. We saved those, so. Also, limited series augments are supposed to have plus 10% success rate. Wait a second. Why did that one not have it? Is it because I was getting rid of the... Anyway, let's not focus too hard on it. Let's go and set up our weapon before I start to get irritated at that. But I'll look at that and let you guys know in the video description what exactly went on there, or I guess in a pinned comment. So 3 of those, pop 100%, and then we're good. We do want to multi-weapon this, so slap on a pair of jet boots. Unlock its potential. I do believe this is reduced because of the event, but this is honestly where it becomes most expensive with setting up weapons, is taking care of potential unlocks, multi-weaponing, all that stuff is way too expensive for most people. Yeah, 160k for potential unlock. That's kind of crazy. But it's done. No big deal. It's all taken care of. Don't have to worry about that anymore. Let's go ahead and move on to augment. So if we're augmenting this, how are we setting this up? So first off, we do have an Addy capsule. The Addy capsule you decide to go with is up to you. I personally am not going to put a crazy expensive Addy capsule on something I'm using for farming enemies out in the open world or during the event. Personally, this is good enough. This is about 1.2 mil. If you want to go even cheaper, There's the Guam Meltex. There's the what's the other one? The Ward Meltec. Those are usually the cheapest of the addies, but as long as it's one of the newer addies because it comes with potency floor, it's definitely worth using. If you have an old addy capsule, I believe those are still worth quite a bit unnecessarily. They are slightly better depending upon the weapon you're using. However, not in this case specifically because it is 3% and plus a 1% potency floor. And this weapon does favor crit chance. Keep in mind that extra augment we're keeping this time around has extra crit chance, right? So we need higher potency to take value of that crit chance, much less potency floor. And in case you guys are curious how that works out, whenever you crit, it doesn't actually calculate your potency floor in the slightest. All it cares about is your potency plus your max hit plus a percentage. 10% is good enough. There we go. We have our weapon all set up here. So our potential is giving us 15% when we dodge, 20% here. What is it? 10%, I believe, from our add-on skill and 5% base. We're creeping up on that 65 or that 60% golden spot, where Termina is going to start to be stronger when we get there. It isn't quite that much right now, and I just got a good deal on Termina 3, so I just went ahead and went with Termina. This again is a weapon we'll be using that has access to a bit higher crit chance, so getting a Termina weapon is not that bad as opposed to getting, you know, a Fatale weapon, which is noticeably stronger, right? Fatale is going to be a better choice. However, the Terminal weapon is not a bad choice comparatively if we're dealing with event enemy weapon or event enemies because we have the extra crit chance against them. So the weapon ends up being all right. And now we're looking at our weapon. Let's go ahead and slap it on. I think I'm going to put, it is an event weapon. We'll toss the event weapon down at the bottom, right? Here we go. Make sure we have that set up. There we go. So augment wise, how much is it really going to cost us? Our soul, oh, I actually put this in the wrong order. I'll keep it. Our soul, nil souls are less than 10k a piece. I think 7k each. So this is about a value of 70k because we use 10 of these, right? This comes on the weapon. This comes on the weapon. These are between 1 to 5k realistically, so about a value of 50k. And this is the most expensive augment that would run you about 1.2 mil. Realistically, you can spend anywhere between 400 to 800k depending upon your market on this last slot, and you will be set up with an event weapon that gets you covered for quite some time. And keep in mind, this is going to be useful for Christmas, New Year's, and winter 2023. So going to be helpful for all of those events. The only caveat I give to this weapon, and I'll let you guys know ahead of time because this is something that I have reservations about, I'm not 100% sure, is that technically we don't know what those event weapons are going to, or we don't know what those events are going to be like, if it's going to be a situation where this event is just running through all of that time, if there's going to be other event weapons available. In this current event, we technically do have enemies that are weak to fire, but are event enemies that aren't weak to ice, but this weapon is ice. While we have bosses that are weak to ice that aren't event enemies. So it's just a very crazy, weird mix-up at the moment. Like for example, we're fighting Vardias, now that his drop table has been fixed. For the first portion where you're fighting the enemies that spawn him, you're fighting them with the ice weapon, the event weapon, but then when you're fighting him, you're using your fire weapon, the effulgent weapon, or something else, if you happen to have that, because technically he's weak to fire. So it's a weird mix back and forth, right? Of like, is this worth it versus is it not? It's kind of this elemental dance you have to do that happened a lot back in base game, but it seems like it's coming back a little bit now. I'm not 100% sure if that's going to be a consistent thing, but it is something worth mentioning and worth thinking about moving forward. That's going to be a kind of a bothersome situation for you. I wouldn't worry too much about this, but if you're someone who says maybe you haven't set up a weapon at all, you're running an Obsidian still, and you want to go ahead and set yourself up with something that's going to be useful for the event and moving forward, this is not a tough ask. I feel like this is totally reasonable. You've got technique weapon, you have techniques, which is our stats. We have our stat 4, we have our soul 4, and we have a an addy capsule. Worst case scenario, if you don't want to use an addy capsule, you can use alt secreta. Alt secreta is not a bad choice in this slot here. I personally would prefer an addy capsule, but alt secreta will work fine. And that's really it. I wouldn't recommend going a gigastat here. It is just another stat. If you have to go with nothing else, gigastat 3 is something. But again, it's one of those situations where go with what you have access to, and you're going to have a pretty solid build across the board. You definitely do want to have one of these weapons. They are very, very good. Now, this video was a little longer than I wanted it to be, but I wanted to go through with you guys and show you guys exactly what it is I go through when I'm deciding to make a weapon. Let me know if you guys have any questions, toss them in the comments below. Like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you want to keep up with more, and I'll see you all next time. Take care. Peace out.